I'm going to show you how to check if your levels, both spirit and laser, are accurate and give you a good understanding of the principles involved. This video will be in two parts. First, I'll cover everything you need to know about spirit levels, and then I'll get to the lasers. Spirit levels work by a very simple principle that this glass vase will help me to demonstrate. A barrel-shaped vial is mostly filled with mineral spirits, which is where the spirit level gets its name from. Yes, it can be other oils too. I'm using water in this. I say mostly because a little space is left to form a bubble. That bubble moves in the vial, and with a couple of well-placed marks, we can figure out if something is level. Then, if you put the vial in a straight stick, you can use it to check things, like flat surfaces mostly, to see if those surfaces are level. So that's how it works. But how do we check to see if the person who put the vial in the stick did a good job? That's really easy. We just turn the stick around. If the vial is placed properly, that is, to read you true level, the orientation of the stick on a level surface won't matter. You'll notice if I raise up one end of the vial to imitate it being placed in the stick improperly, the bubble moves over here. Then if I turn the vial around 180 degrees, now it's over here. The first time it looked like the left side was too high, and the second time that the right side was too high, because obviously they were. But if that's how the vial is fixed to the stick, with one end too high, you'll never have a level reading. So to check your level, set it on a flat surface, hopefully something pretty close to level. Some people get really fussy over marking exactly where it is with tape or paper. I'm just gonna set it on the corner of my kitchen island. They think that if it's in a slightly different position, it'll affect the bubble. But I rather doubt that their or my levels are that sensitive. Then check the bubble in the vial. It's not important that it be dead center, that it's actually reading level, so don't worry about that. Just make sure you know where it is. You can even take a photo with your phone to be able to check and compare. Then spin your level around 180 degrees and check it again. If the bubble ends up in the same place, your level is good. If it doesn't, simply sight down along your level and see if you have at least a good straight edge, because that's about all it's good for now. This works the same on vertical surfaces to check plumb. Place your level up against the wall, check the bubble, and flip it. Check the bubble again and compare. You'll notice that when I did this, I went from checking this bubble to checking this bubble. So if I want to be sure that either of these are accurate, I have to be able to check this bubble here and then flip it and check it up here. If you find yours is bad, before you decide to replace it, have a look to see if it has screws around the vial or if it looks like you might be able to easily remove it. If you have a hand-me-down level, or if someone gave you a high-quality one as a present, it's possible that it has the ability to be adjusted. If it doesn't have screws, but you can remove the vial non-destructively, you might be able to reinsert it in a position that reads more truly level. Finally, if you want to get really fussy about things, there are different grades of vial precision. You can spend a lot of money on something that'll show you the difference in level one extra piece of paper makes. If you know what the application was in mind for a level that is this short and this precise, please tell me in the comments. You can check your 45-degree bubble by finding where your level reads 45 as level, marking either the wall or the floor with a piece of tape, and then again, spinning it around. Now, onto the laser levels. These work by sticking a laser emitter with a prism onto a hanging pendulum. The laser shoots, the prism does some physics magic, and it creates a laser plane. No, that's an invisible plane. That's more like it. I'll use this card on a stick to help visualize what's going on. The card represents the laser plane shot out by the level. The same principle applies to laser levels as it did to spirit levels. To see if the laser is shooting level, start turning it by 90 degrees. If when you turn it around, the laser ends up in different places, then it's not reading level. This applies to whether it's a horizontal laser or a vertical laser, and mine has 3 that would have to be checked. Let's go through in more detail, starting with the horizontal laser. Put your laser close to one wall and far from another. The exact distances don't matter much. Just remember that the trade-off will be between deviation amplification, how easy it is to see how much it is off of level, and the thickness of your laser line. As you get closer to a wall, the line gets smaller. So easier to mark, but the error also gets smaller, so harder to determine if it's level. The horizontal laser needs to be checked both front to back and side to side. So we'll make 5 marks on a piece of paper on a wall. The first will be a height reference on the near wall. Every time you turn the laser, you need to make sure it matches to that first line. I use what I call the laser fusser. It'll be linked below to dial this in. It's got 4 geared adjustments you can use to get really precise in your positioning. The other lines are as follows. Put the laser facing forward and mark a line on the paper on the far wall. Spin it around 180 degrees, line it up to your reference line, and mark on the far wall again. This tells you how level it is front to back. I can use a triangle solver to do some math to find the angle of my total deviation. For me, 19 feet distance was 228 inches, and my unlevel amount was 3/16 of an inch, or 0.1875. I can use those numbers to find the angle by which my laser plane is tilted. Now I can use that angle to find out my working distances based on my allowable tolerances. So if I want it within 1/8 inch of level, I have to be within 152 inches. If I want to be within 1/16, that comes down to 76 inches. If I'm tiling with small grout lines, that halves again down to 38 inches. That means if I want to tile a shower, I have to remember that my level plane is tilted slightly back and to place my laser either facing forwards or away from the shower, not aligned sideways. Just like a spirit level can still have some functional value as a straight edge, you can use this math to determine how much usable distance your laser level still has. Then pick one side of the laser, line it up to the reference, and make a new mark on the far wall. Spin 180 and repeat. This tells you how level it is side to side. Next are the vertical planes. This should give you your plumb lines. To get this, I'll have the laser on the floor to get enough distance to clearly see any discrepancy. I make a mark on paper on the floor in front of and behind the laser, then a mark near the ceiling on the wall. It's also helpful to have a mark near the floor on the wall to ensure that your laser is perfectly lined up, but it's the mark near the ceiling that determines your plumbness. These 2 marks on the floor close to the laser are only really there to help you get it lined up to the mark on the wall. You could probably also just put a piece of paper under it, mark your plumb point, and angle it till you're on. As before, spin the laser 180 degrees and realign the floor marks. Now check the mark near the ceiling and that'll tell you how true to plumb you are. Do this for the front and side lasers. Finally, while it might not get used much, if you're putting this effort in, you should also check if your plumb planes are properly perpendicular. There's a good chance you'll want to lay out some right angles with your laser someday. There are several ways to do this, with the fastest and easiest being some simple geometry. If you're familiar, this is the triangle method. Set your laser up and mark on the floor where the lasers cross. This is your plumb point. This cross will always be in the same position no matter how high or low you go, if they're properly plumb. So I'm going to use my mostly solid lead piece of staging material as a stop, and because I can't put it right underneath the tripod, I'm just going to burn off 10 inches, put it 10 inches back. Then when I read my measurement, I have to just remember to take off 10 inches. Then you can go out as far as possible along one line, measure that distance from your plumb point to your first triangle corner. Then do the same with the other line. Finally, measure between those two, do some simple math. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So square the 2 distances, add them together, then take the square root. That number should match what you measured. If it doesn't, then you've either done it wrong or your lasers aren't perpendicular. I've got my house right at the edge of this X here, and I'm going to tape the left side of my tape right up against that laser line. Difficult to do with one hand. So we end up with 178 and about 7/16. So if this is our triangle, this is 11 feet, this is 10 feet, and that is 178 7/16. So 10 feet is 120 inches, 11 feet is 132 inches. It's 17,424 when you square it, and this is 144.00. When you square it, you add those up, you get 31,824. You take the square root, you get 178.393. 7/16 that I measured is 0.438. It's 0.75, but I'm only going to use 3 significant digits. So when you take away what it should be from what it is, you get 0.031. I jumped ahead here. You get 0.045, and the closest imperial fraction anyone ever actually cares about is 1/32, which is 0.031. It's actually much closer to 3/64s, but the point stands. So over a distance of 178 inches, I am out by 1/32. That's good enough for square for me. You might see other methods that let you calculate the angle of deviation, but I don't really care about that. If I'm calibrating a tool, I calibrate it to my specifications, not the manufacturer's.